Hello, I just want to talk very briefly about subsidies. A subsidy is an amount paid by the government to the producer in order to offset production costs. We're going to be considering a per unit subsidy. So the producer gets a dollar amount for every unit that he or she produces. Obviously, the subsidy will reduce the producer's costs, and therefore when we look at a diagram, we can see that the impact is going to be a downward shift of the marginal cost curve. I'm drawing it right now. So this new line is then the supply curve minus the subsidy. We can see that with the subsidy we're going to have different market outcomes. We see immediately that the new equilibrium quantity is going to be way over here. That is, we're going to be producing more than we used to. Consumer is going to be paying a lower price, so the consumer price is going to be PC right there. But this is very important right here. The producers are going to receive whatever the consumers pay them, and then they're going to get the subsidy on top of that. So the amount of money that producers get is actually PP, which is a higher amount. That difference between the price consumers pay and the price producers receive is the key thing here. And of course, the government is going to have to pay out the subsidy for every unit that they produce. So there's going to be a rectangle. You can see it right there. The rectangle is going to be how much the government will have to pay out to the firms in terms of subsidy expenses. Now, as you know, when we want to do welfare analysis, we need to enter or add a few letters for all the areas. I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. So we have this letter A, B, C, and D. I'm going to add some more letters over here. E, F, G, and H. I think that's going to do it. Now, using those letters, we can then look at what's the welfare before the subsidy in a free market, and then we can compare that to the welfare total surplus after the subsidy. So let's do that. I'm just going to move this one over to the side a little bit and bring out our welfare table right here, and we can go through this together. I think you can immediately see that when the market price is what it was before a subsidy, right here, P star and Q star, consumer surplus will be the area below the demand curve and above what consumers pay. And producer surplus is going to be the area above the supply curve below what producers receive. And notice here that consumers pay the same amount as producers receive. So if I just add these numbers over here, you can see that the free market consumer surplus is equal to A, B, and the free market producer surplus is equal to C and D. And here, of course, the government is not doing anything. It's a free market, so there's no government revenue or government expenses, and therefore the total surplus is going to be A, B, C, and D. The question is, what happens to these areas and these welfare effects? What are the welfare effects when we have a subsidy? Well, now, first of all, we notice that consumers are going to pay less money than they used to, and they're going to consume a greater amount. So we would expect consumer surplus to increase, and that's true. So we look at the area below the demand curve, above the price that consumers pay. That area includes a lot of letters, so I'm going to write them down here. We have A, B, C, F, and G. Now, then we have to find the producer surplus, which is again the area below the price paid or received by the producers and above the supply curve. So in this case, we can see that that's going to be the price received is this line right there, and of course the supply curve is right there. Notice that if you use the new price, then you have to use the old supply curve. So don't use the new price and the new supply curve, because then you're going to be double counting the subsidy. you're going to count it twice. So we have to use the new price and old supply curve, and we see then that suppliers will receive B, C, D, and E. Government's going to have to pay out things. You know, they're going to pay for this subsidy now, and that is that rectangle I showed you earlier. So it's this rectangle, the subsidy multiplied by the quantity. So B, C, E, F, G, and H is going to be the amount of money that the government is going to have to pay out. So it's going to be a negative B, C, E, F, G, H. Well, now we just have to add up that to get total surplus. So what we're going to have to do is add consumer surplus and producer surplus, and then remove the expense of the subsidy. So this is a little tricky, so sometimes one might just want to scratch it up, so you can have B, B, C, C, E, E, F, F, G, G. So those are the things. And if I look what's left, we have positive A, B, C, and D, but we have a negative H. And that negative H is what's reducing the surplus of the subsidy compared to the free market. And that reduction, that loss in subsidy that nobody gets, is what we call a deadweight loss. So H is then the deadweight loss right there. All right, so here we see again that the subsidy, in a perfect world where the demand curve and the supply curve perfectly represents the value to society and the cost to society associated with consuming and producing this good, then a subsidy would actually reduce efficiency. Again, there are other reasons for why we might want to use a subsidy related to equity concerns. Thank you.